from the sublime to, some might say, the controversial. I'm very happy to introduce Tom Goodwin, a renowned innovation expert and author. And he's going to be talking us through the 8 myths of modern marketing and how we can stop being stupid. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you very much. And hello, everybody. And hopefully you can hear me and you can see my slides. 15-minute, 8 myths to go through. And yes, indeed, I am Tom Goodwin. My role is to understand the change in the world that matters. What's changing? What can we do about it? This will be a very rapid fire presentation. So you will all get copies of the slides, which you can look at and dissect and relabel the axes in your own time. There will be a QR code like this at the end. Don't do it now because you probably won't listen to me, but get ready to do that. 2006, I'm like a bird. Yep, Nelly Furtado was in the charts, Pirates of the Caribbean. Everyone had a Motorola Razr. And broadly speaking, it was this point, I think, in time where perhaps advertising and marketing as a whole kind of lost its way. Now, don't get me wrong, I think the future will be amazing. I think we have the best tools we could ever have to do the best advertising we can ever do. But I do like to be a bit nostalgic. It's interesting to think of the era when David Beckham would be sending pictures of coffee to celebrate the capability of 3G. It was interesting thinking about the Fallon ad with the gorilla for Cadbury. It's fun thinking about Mac versus PC. This was kind of an era where we didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't have any data. We would rarely have any sort of texture behind what was working and what wasn't. And we tended to rely on gut feeling and how we could sort of navigate the world using instinct. And I kind of missed that because the internet, as it sort of proliferated through our lives, basically became an engine for self-doubt. There was this feeling that we weren't really keeping up to speed, that we weren't making the most of it. And we started sort of looking inwards and sort of backwards and creating this real self-doubt. And the internet sort of promised to be this sort of new religious icon almost. We started learning the sort of new religious texts of the internet and we became somewhat indoctrinated. And it's been almost like a cult for the last few years where people have been so enamored with technology, they've sort of lost sense of what really is going on and what really matters and what's really true. And therefore we have these myths. And I'm going to go through 8 of them. The first one is that things are changing faster than ever before. And this is a very data-supported argument because we see charts like this. And as you look to the right, the lines get steeper and they become more red. And red is obviously a color of great significance. So we can see how quickly the smartphone, how quickly the internet, how quickly the microwave has taken over, and how slow things like the telephone were. We can look at how long it took to get to 50 million users, and we can see that WeChat took 1 year. We can see that Pokemon Go got to 50 million users in 19 days. These are crazy times to be alive. We've got virtual reality headsets, we've got 3D printers, we've got drones, everything's changing, we've got blockchain, we've got robots, even though they look a bit like an iPad stand. Everything's going mad, and therefore we have to disrupt or we die. We have to have a blockchain strategy or we'll get fired. And TV or the radio or newspapers or whatever it is, everything from the past is dead. The thing is, it's not really in any way true. It's not really supported by anything. If you actually look at the change in the past, things like telephones or electricities or cars or even things like containerization of goods actually completely changed the world and radically quickly. And many of the things that we celebrate happening now, like the digital camera or the MP3 player or the tablet, they may have happened quickly. Pokemon Go happened very quickly, but it hasn't really changed the fundamentals of how we live. There have been many periods of time where the world has changed very, very, very quickly. This is not in any way an extraordinary time. We have this wonderful word chronocentrism, which is to assume that we live at a moment of great importance. And I'm just not really sure that's true. If you look at how we spend time every day doing different things, things don't really change that much. We still pet dogs. We still clean dishwashers. We still watch TV. We still play sports. If you look at the most downloaded apps every year, they tend to be quite similar. And while the Snapchat may fall slightly out of favor, you have an app like TikTok, which is not in significant ways that different. So I think for myth number one, I think let's just relax a little bit. Let's stop assuming that we need a blockchain strategy, that drones will eat our company alive. And let's focus on what really, really matters, which is often people, and is often their desires, and is often ideas to connect with them. Myth number two, things are more complex than ever before. We know things are complex because we have the Lunarscape, which exists to show how complicated every single thing is. We can look up media fragmentation and we can see that media is fragmenting in all sorts of different directions. We have niche media, we have crazy new technologies, everything's a complete mess out there. Even if you look at something like TV, you know, it's separated into all these different things. There's set-top boxes, there's over-the-air, there's linear, there's time-shifted. It's just a nightmare in all directions. But you can kind of make anything look complicated if you want. I mean, this is the Lunarscape of kitchen brands. And you'd look at this and presume that you must have to have a full-time employee just to tell you what sort of cutlery to buy. Buying a microwave must be a sort of existential crisis. And actually, there's a lot of money to be made in things seeming complex. And actually, if you take a step back, genuinely, things are much simpler than ever before. The internet has come into our life and is now the plumbing for almost everything that we look at. And now, rather than very, very many different formats of things like newspapers and magazines and outdoor and 6 sheets and 38 sheets and PR, we tend to just have a world where we have black mirrors in front of us and they're connected to the internet. So let's relax a little bit and focus on what matters, but also what is not changing. We have this idea that we're living in volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous times, and more so than ever before. But if you kind of look at things, a lot of stuff's pretty predictable. This is the change in daily media consumption, and you can just see there's a lot more internet in our life. But broadly speaking, there's not radically crazy things happening out there. Obviously, this is 2020 and we have COVID-19 and no one expected a pandemic right now. And as a result, everything is completely all over the place. These are the number of Netflix subscribers. And you can now see that people are watching Netflix. I don't know where this has come from. There was no data to support the fact that people would be watching Netflix in large numbers this year. It's just extraordinary. It's just absolutely mind-blowing to think that people are now doing this despite there being about 15 years showing this about to happen. We can see the department stores are failing. We can see that e-commerce is rising. There has been 20 years of very, very predictable data to show us this. You can see what items people are buying online, and you can see that there are very steady gradients going up. We do not live in times which are particularly unpredictable. You can see the rise in telehealth, which has been predicted for a long time. The rise in flexible office growth, which has been predicted for a long time. The rise in people working from home, which has been predicted for a long time. So let's not kid ourselves. So maybe just relax a little bit and think about what you can reasonably predict, and think about the things that probably will happen, and also think about the things that probably won't happen. Like, it's not that likely that the internet vanishes from our life. It's not that likely we will stop the urge to show off to each other. It's not that likely we won't need shelter. Like, many, many human characteristics do not change. So this idea that somehow things are crazy, it just isn't really true. Myth number 4, people want conversation with brands. We know this is true because people say it all the time. People have stuff like this on vast screens at very expensive events that talk about turning customers into fanatics, products into obsessions, employees into ambassadors, brands into religions. And it feels so good. It makes us feel so important. We are now doing God's work. But if you were to really think about the brands that you really bloody love, like the things you'd go out of your way to do, the things that give you joy, you can get to about 4 or 5 quite quickly. One of mine's Aesop for some reason. And then you quite quickly stop because you realize there are things that are quite important to you, but you don't love. Like American Airlines is quite handy for me, but I don't want to send them a Christmas card. And we have to understand that the reality is that someone like Adam Ferrier is right. Most of the time, people really, really don't care about your brand. They don't care about your purpose. They don't care about your story. They don't care about why you made the company. But if you list the brands that you regularly buy, maybe it's Personal Automatic, or maybe it's a type of bread that you quite like. There are hundreds and hundreds of brands that you care enough about to get reassurance from. So I think we need to understand that being empathetic towards people is actually vital, and to think of brands as being unbelievably in the background for people's lives is not being pessimistic. It's just a vital design parameter to make our jobs much, much better. Because when we know our job is to be sort of in the background and reassuring, it makes it a lot easier to start crafting our strategies. So the answer to myth 4 is just to know your place. Just realize what you're invited to and what you're not. Myth number 5, brands are dying. I think brands have been dying since I entered the industry in about 2001, and everything is going to kill brands. If Amazon's not killing brands, then voice is killing brands. Scott Galloway, a man I respect and have good conversations with, he thinks brands are going to die because of voice. And there isn't really any evidence to suggest this is true. I grew up in a very safe Cotswold village, and there were 2 things I got told when I grew up. One is to not sit that close to the TV, and the second thing is to not get in the cars that strangers drive. It's a very big thing, strange danger and all that. And now I will happily get into a car with a complete stranger because I'm using Uber to get it. And Uber is a brand I trust. I might look for some shoes and I might type in Adidas sneakers, and then I'll get some suggested sneakers. This is Emoji, I believe they're called. And I have zero interest in these. I don't even care that much about Adidas, but the idea I'm going to buy some sneakers from a brand that no one's ever heard of is absolutely insane. And actually, if you look at the value of brands, by every single category almost, with a few exceptions, with dying categories, brands are worth more than they've ever earned before. And if you look at the top brands by the top 100, top 10, they're all growing in value. So this idea that brands are dying is nonsense. In fact, they become more important. The more choice that we have, the more confidence we need in the choices that we make. And this is where Scott is entirely right. So myth number 5, the way to resolve this is we don't really love brands. As I mentioned before in myth number 4, we don't care about them that much. We don't need their story. We don't need to have conversations with them, but they are more vital than ever before because they give us confidence. Myth number 6, we have shorter attention spans than ever. Most rainy weekends, people now consume hours upon hours upon hours of TV. There is no evidence from the way that people watch TV to suggest that we have shorter attention spans. Anyone who ever thinks that kids have a shorter attention span has clearly not seen them being surgically attached to their phone, watching TikTok or playing Fortnite or Minecraft. You can look at the average feature-length film. Granted, this only goes up to 2013, but there's just zero evidence whatsoever that we have shorter attention spans. What really matters isn't how long things last. It's the context in which you're consuming them, and it's how good it is. It's really, really that simple. Myth number 7, people are hard to reach. These are uncontacted tribes in the Amazon. These are people who will shoot you with a poisonous dart because they don't trust you, and these people are not big TikTok viewers. These people are quite easy to reach. These people are quite easy to reach. These people are quite easy to reach. In fact, there's never been an easier time to reach people. It's unbelievably easy to reach people. They are hard to engage. They are incredibly hard to engage, but reach is really not the problem. The last one. We have this obsession with everything that's new and that can be done, and everything that's measured is therefore somehow given a greater position in the world than things that we can feel. If you were to write down a list of how many things that you own and the brands that make them, there would be many things. There'd be shoes, there'd be toasters, there'd be washing machines, fridges, cars, jeans, socks. It would be amazing how many things you own from a brand. But if you ask yourself how many ads have you ever clicked on, I mean, deliberately, maybe 4. So does that mean that every ad that I didn't click on was completely unhelpful? Does that mean they're all wasted? We have to accept that many of the metrics that we use are not just not particularly helpful. It's that they are totally and utterly and emphatically useless. They bear no correlation for anything. Most of the KPIs that we use to measure how we're doing and that we optimize against, I don't think we've really come to terms with how useless they are. It's this part of this data-driven approach. We've fallen in love with words like personalization. We think that people want personalization. They don't. They just don't like irrelevance. If we could avoid the temptation to personalize and instead make sure that we're not irrelevant, we would do much better. We have modern philosophy like wastage is bad, where in fact wastage is awareness, wastage is jealousy, wastage is cultural capital, wastage is confidence. Wastage is basically your entire future. Your ability to build a brand depends on wastage. You can't build brands with performance ads. You can, it's just that we haven't tried yet. So my tips for the future, focus on what matters, do simple things well. I genuinely think this is the best time to work in marketing, and we need a bit of urgency. So that's why I called my company All We Have Is Now, because this is a wonderful time to reinvent what the future of marketing should be based on knowledge of the past and augmented by wonderful new technology. If you want these slides, this is the QR code. Thank you very much, everyone.